Welcome to the Three Questions webcast series. I'm Wayne Baxter, Executive Director with One Capital Management. At One Capital Management, we develop and implement strategies that enable our clients to grow, protect, and ultimately distribute their wealth. And we do that by offering investment wealth management services. Thank you for taking time to check us out. My clients are often referred to as cross-border clients. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're either U.S. or Canadian residents who invest in U.S. and or Canadian dollar-denominated securities like stocks, bonds, or ETFs. Our process for advising our clients includes an in-depth discovery and diagnostic analysis of their wealth management goals and objectives. And for Canadians looking to move to the United States or for U.S. residents, having a risk management strategy should be a part of their overall wealth management strategy. When considering your personal wealth, the term risk management can conjure up thoughts about the stock market and the strategies that you would employ to protect your liquid assets from unwanted stock market risk. As an experienced advisor, I can assure that there are plenty of other risks to consider beyond what you may experience when investing in the stock market. For example, consider asking yourself, how would I be protected financially if I was injured? On today's Three Questions webcast, we'll be reviewing the 3 questions Canadians living in the United States should ask if they are injured. Joining me is Jonathan Howell. Jonathan is a Los Angeles, California-based personal injury attorney and partner with the law firm Howell LLP. Jonathan represents individuals and families who have been hurt or have lost a loved one due to negligence. Hello, Jonathan. Thank you for taking time to join us today on the 3 Questions webcast.
Hi, Wayne. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you again. As I mentioned earlier, there are plenty of other risks to consider beyond what you experience in the stock market, investing in stocks and bonds and exchange traded funds. For example, what happens if you are injured by another person, so in a car accident, as an example. And John, obviously the reason I had you join us today is that you're very experienced in this area. You have a lot of experience dealing with these types of injuries and plenty others. I always tell people, John tells the most incredible stories when it comes to personal injury incidents he's had to deal with. And you've been doing this for a long time. We should just jump right into this if you don't mind. I know we're going to spend a bit of time together here. So let's get right into it. The 3 questions, Canadian moving to the US. And as you know, John, I work with a lot of cross-border clients that move to the US and quite frankly, they're not aware of the implications that dealing with either injuring someone else or being injured themselves. And over the next little while, we're going to try to cover both of these topics. But let's get to the first question. So let's suppose I am injured. The first question is, do I need to get a lawyer?
Yeah, that's a good question, Wayne. And, you've talked about risk, and particularly when it deals with people's money, but oftentimes people say that your health is the most important thing. And the amount of money that we see people spend in order to protect their health or get better just shows how important it is. If you've been injured, it may be important to speak to a lawyer, and it really depends on the extent of injury, particularly if it was done by somebody else. The injury was caused by somebody else. I'm not talking about a bruise or just a slight ache and pain, but if you have an injury that's persistent or not going away, or obviously even more severe where you end up in an emergency room, it's a good idea to speak to a lawyer. And at the end of the day, most lawyers like myself will give a free consultation. So there's no downside to just calling the lawyer and say, hey, is this worth pursuing? Get 2 or 3 opinions, but if everybody's saying, yeah, you know what, don't worry about it, it's not a case, then at least you can feel better that you investigated it and it's no money out of your own pocket.
Okay, so basically, first of all, just check to see if this is something you should be looking for advice on. And so we move to the next stage. So let's suggest that in this instance, this case is serious now. There was actual negligence involved. The next obvious question, most of my clients would ask, based on my experience, is what do personal injury attorneys charge for their services?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of people get spooked when they think about hiring a lawyer because they imagine lawyers are very expensive, and we hear about these hourly rates that can get out of control. Well, the good news for a personal injury lawyer like myself is that we charge a contingency fee, which means you pay no money up front, and we cover the costs. Usually, like in my firm, we cover the cost as well, and we get paid at the end of the case based on our result or recovery. So the better we do for you, it also increases the fee that we have. typically the range of fees that you see for a contingency fee practice in personal injury is between 33 and a third percent and 40%. Those fees are not set in stone, and it's not something that's set by law, at least for a regular personal injury case. And sometimes you can see fees that even go higher than that, 45, 50%. And I would caution people that if they're going to hire a lawyer and they start seeing these really high contingency rates, particularly at different stages of the case, they think twice and maybe get another opinion or speak to other lawyers, because since this is a typical range that you see with lawyers, you can get a very good lawyer for that range. You don't necessarily have to pay the 50% if it's for a lawyer you don't really know well.
I just brought a case to me here about a week or so ago where the individual who is going to get the settlement is getting it in tranches. So it isn't all coming in like one lump sum. They're actually getting a relatively small tranche, relatively speaking, at the front end. And then there's going to be a settlement later on for substantially more. And the person that they're working with, the representative, is basically taking the bulk of their pay from the initial tranche, and the rest of it is basically going to be provided to the client, basically without very little charge. Is that something that's relatively common?
Yes, actually, it's something I'm working on now. When, for example, if you're dealing with an injured minor, someone who's under 18 years old, I obviously cannot just give a chunk of money to someone who's 7 years old. And oftentimes in those cases, the court requires an approval of the settlement process to protect the minor, to make sure the lawyer's not stealing money, the parents or the guardian are not stealing money. And so what's usually structured is exactly what you described. Sometimes it's an annuity payment or some other structure where when they turn 18, they get a little bit of money, and you can structure it all different ways, as long as it's done with a reputable company that's not going to go bankrupt. But in those cases, the attorney will get the payment up front, because obviously the attorney doesn't want to wait for a 7-year-old to turn 18 to get paid for the work they did. And you can see that with other cases too. Some cases, I have individuals who want to, for tax reasons or other reasons, they're just not comfortable with having a significant amount of money placed into their bank account. They're worried about family members. You set up these annuities or other payment structures, but typically the attorney does get paid in that initial lump sum. And it can be structured all different ways, and it's usually always done, the way I do it is always with my client's consent. We talk about everything.
All right, so basically step one, do I need an attorney? Step two, just to clarify that, there are often options in terms of how the payment is set up, and not, it won't be unusual that the third question often will be, well, how long is my case going to take to resolve? And ultimately, how do I decide, how will I know what this case should be worth? Is that something that you can in any way, shape, or form determine at the front end of this, or is that one of those classic examples which I've learned since moving here to the United States, where the answer is it depends? Or is there something I learned? Didn't take me long to get to know my lawyer friends here in LA to find out that a lot of answers end up with, well, it depends, Wayne. Is that one of those cases, or is there something a bit more definitive?
Well, Wayne, it depends. I can kind of give you a range, and I can give you some factors. And I think that, understanding the factors can help. And that's what I tell my clients, help them understand what it means when I say it depends. It depends. So in terms of timing, some cases can take a few months and some can take a few years. And usually what I'm looking for is an understanding of the nature and extent of the injury. And sometimes an injury doesn't really plateau, or we don't really understand until they've had some treatment, they've had maybe some doctor's visits, consultations, imaging studies, things like that. It could take much longer if there's a dispute about things like how the accident happened, who's at fault, or the nature and extent of the injuries, how it's going to affect you in the future. And if we have to litigate, every time you litigate a case, everything you do has to give notice to the other side. They have to have time to object. They have to have time to file motions. And that's why you start seeing cases that last 2-3 years, sometimes more. But those are the reasons why, or the ranges that you typically see for cases, maybe a couple months to a couple years. Now, In terms of how much you're going to get in the case, there are not a million, but there's many factors that go into it. Obviously, the number one is the nature and extent of the injury. A person who has a slight back pain, they go to a chiropractor for a few weeks, is going to get less money than somebody who has to have emergency surgery to have their neck repaired or be helicoptered from the scene. There are other factors like if they're going to miss time from work and what future treatment they're going to need. And so those are things that attorneys look at when determining how much is their case going to be worth. And sometimes, I have clients early on in the case and they ask me, how much is my case worth? And I tell them the exact same factors, and let's see how you progress. Hopefully you get better, but if you don't, this is what we're going to expect.
All right. Well, the beauty of the 3 questions webcast is I can throw in a question that maybe is sort of off the cuff here. And you actually brought something up about missing work. So here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. Would the amount of claim that's assessed be impacted based on whether or not the aggrieved person, the injured person, had long-term disability insurance through their work or on their own? In other words, if they were an uninsured worker, would their case be, would you be able to make the case, well, listen, this person doesn't have coverage, therefore they're entitled to more? Or does that in any way affect what the settlement would be?
Sure, that's a very good question.
That's not one of the 3 questions. That's Wayne's bonus question for the day.
I like it. It's a good question. It actually comes up a lot. So under the law, you are entitled to lost wages or lost income as a result of the accident. If you happen to have a policy of some sort of insurance that would protect you in that event, and you do get money from that, it gets a little technical, but there are evidence rules that prohibit that from coming into evidence, because just like you have health insurance or car insurance, that sort of stuff doesn't go into evidence. The jury only hears that you missed time from work. However, caveat, separate from evidence, some of those insurance policies do have provisions where if you do get money from a settlement or third party, you have to reimburse them for the money that they paid. So there's a lot of little nuances there. And sometimes you can negotiate with those providers saying, well, if it wasn't for my lawyer and the work we did, you wouldn't get reimbursed. So maybe you should take less than what you paid. But at the end of the day, if you miss time from work and you end up using sick pay or you have disability payments, you are still entitled to your lost wages or lost income.
Interesting. Well, on this webcast, John, we've addressed some of the questions that someone would ask if they were when they were injured. We're going to have John back. And the next time we have him back, we're going to take it from a completely different point of view. The next time we're going to address the 3 questions Canadians living in the United States should ask if they were accused of causing an injury. Now, you're not going to want to miss that. So please stay tuned and keep an eye out for a notification when that webcast is posted. John, we've included your contact information here on the screen for someone who's looking in and looking for, watching us and looking for maybe some help or some assistance or some direction. What would be the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, they can call my office at 888-712-0017, or they can always email me directly at Jon, Jon, at Howell, Howell, justice.com.
Perfect. And again, we have that right on the screen, so folks will be able to see that. That's great. John, I want to thank you for participating in our webcast today. Great job as usual. Love having you on and connecting with you. And we'll be seeing you really soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Wayne. Talk to you soon.
I hope today's 3 questions webcast with John Howell reinforces the importance of implementing a well thought out wealth management strategy. And again, as an experienced advisor, I can assure you that a well thought out wealth management strategy includes more than simply having a well diversified investment portfolio and regularly scheduled contributions, or if needed, withdrawals. It takes planning and more planning. And that planning should include a serious look at where your finances are at risk, whether it's due to a personal injury or an unexpected illness to yourself or a loved one. Now, the good news is there are strategies out there that you can implement to help you protect your family's finances. As you can see, it takes a team of carefully selected experts, each with a high level of knowledge and skill. And the purpose of the 3 questions webcast series is to introduce you to some of these experts. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. And to receive a notification of when our latest webcasts have been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below. You'll see it. It's www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.